The Speaker of Ontario's legislature is defending his decision to ban the wearing of keffiyehs in the chamber.
Procedurally, I believe I made the right decision in the sense of past rulings of speakers and precedents and traditions. And in my opinion, having done the research, it appeared to me that the keffiyeh is being worn to make a political statement.
In a statement earlier this week, the Speaker wrote, "After extensive research, I concluded that the wearing of a keffiyeh at the present time in our Assembly is clearly intended to make a political statement," as you just heard him say. "So as Speaker, I cannot authorize the wearing of it in the chamber." The keffiyeh is a scarf commonly worn by Arabs. It holds special significance to Palestinians as a symbol of resistance, and has been seen on pro-Palestinian demonstrators recently as they protest the Israel-Hamas war. Ontario's opposition leader Marit Stiles put forward a motion this morning calling on the Speaker to reverse this ban, but the motion failed after it did not receive unanimous consent. Conservative MPP Robin Martin voted against the motion, saying the Speaker's initial ruling was the correct one.
The Legislative Assembly has rules. Political clothing is not allowed to be worn in the Legislative Assembly. As a member, I have a vote, and I voted to not change that decision because I think it is the correct decision.
Ontario's Premier, on the other hand, says he does not support this ban in the chamber. Here's what he said in a press conference today.
It really comes down to uniting Ontarians and communities. We see the division right now that's going on. It's not healthy, and this would just divide the community even more.
Okay, here to break this all down for us is the Queen's Park Observer's Sabrina Nanji. She's been following this story closely. Sabrina, always good to have you on the show. What have the opposition and the community reactions been to this so far?
Yeah, I mean, once again, the Middle East has scrambled Ontario politics, right? And actually all major party leaders happen to be on the same page. They're aligned against the Speaker's ban on the keffiyeh, but when it came time for Doug Ford's government to walk the talk, his MPP was the one that actually shut down unanimous consent that had been put forward by the NDP. It's not really lost on anyone at Queen's Park that this is happening against the backdrop of a tight by-election race in Milton, where there's a big Muslim community. And so I think timing is everything here. You know, we're talking about parliamentary convention. We know that political props are a no-no, as the Speaker said, but the NDP in particular are saying that Ford has clearly lost control of his caucus. He says one thing, MPPs are doing the opposite, and it's chaos. You know, meanwhile, we've got critics saying that the Premier is just, you know, politicking here. He's pandering to the Muslim community because there's a by-election on. It's the 905. Have a vote-rich, you know, politically important region. But certainly, I think, you know, the calls that are coming from inside Doug Ford's own house and some of the dissent among Conservative caucus members on how this all went down, I think is maybe the most damning politically for Doug Ford right now.
Well, let's just talk a little bit more about that by-election in Milton, right? That is one that everybody is watching because of the dynamic at play. I mean, how do you see this necessarily impacting the vote there?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is no doubt a big Muslim community in Milton, and so I think they will be paying attention. I don't know if, you know, folks in the Muslim community are seeing this as, you know, electioneering, but at the end of the day, I think, you know, as Doug said, he says that this is something that's divisive. What I'm hearing from the folks in the Jewish community actually is that this is something that did not need to be so politicized. It's already so charged already. And by putting out a statement, you know, less than 2 hours after the news broke of this, I think Doug Ford, you know, really, he came out strongly against this. He forced Bonnie Crombie. Marit Stiles wrote a letter to the Speaker that's kind of, you know, more in line with how these things get handled. But they're saying that this has now become something political. It's fueled the headlines on it and created something bigger than maybe it needed to be. Whereas they're seeing this as, you know, something that could have been turned around if the House wanted that too. And the legislature, you know, Robin Martin in particular, voted against it.
You know, in normal issues, Sabrina, when the Premier says they want something, the caucus falls into line, but this is definitely not a normal issue. We saw Robin Martin there represents Eglinton Lawrence, which is the same provincial riding as Marco Mendocino federally, and a significant Jewish population, and obviously this is of big importance to that constituency. But what are you hearing about other members of the caucus who may not be happy with this? What can you share on that?
Yeah, Robin Martin is not the only one. And as you mentioned, we kind of maybe expected her to have this stance on this particular issue, but there are others that have been coming out. I've been hearing that Environment Minister Andrea Kanjan, she's really not happy about this. Laura Smith over in Thornhill, another big Jewish community there. Stephen Lecce has always been very vocal. Solicitor General Michael Kersner. I think just the timing of this, caucus obviously wasn't consulted. And I think that, for Doug Ford to be up there saying one thing and his caucus, especially after being, informed, if you don't want to vote, or if you want to vote against the unanimous consent motion to reverse this ban, stay out of it, stay out of the House, just sit this one out. Obviously, that didn't happen. And I have to say, conservative MPPs are feeling very chatty with us reporters right now. And that's always a bad sign that maybe your dirty laundry is going to get aired right now, and a sign that caucus, it really isn't happy with how this is playing out.
Okay, well, Sabrina, if you get any more good dirty laundry, let us know. We'll have you back. That's Sabrina Nanji. She covers Ontario politics and policy for the Queen's Park Observer. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
For more on this story, I'm joined by Ontario NDP Leader Marit Stiles. Ms. Stiles, welcome back to the show.
Hi, it's great to be here.
You put forward this unanimous consent motion this morning to undo the Speaker's ruling. Why was it important for you to do this?
Well, first of all, obviously I've been back and forth with the Speaker over the last week as soon as I learned that this was, that few staff had been asked to remove the Keffiyeh when they were entering the building, and also some guests of the legislature had been asked to remove it. So it had come to our attention that some policy had changed. But certainly yesterday, when it started to become more public, I was pleased that the Premier joined me in the same call for a change in this policy. Unfortunately, when we brought forward the unanimous consent motion this morning, which literally requires that there be nobody who says no when the Speaker says, does everybody agree? There were voices saying no, certainly at least one, and maybe more voices on the Conservative side. So we were surprised that, given that the Premier, so both the Leader of the official opposition and the Premier had said they have a problem with this policy and don't want it supported, that we would lose that unanimous consent motion.
It is a rare moment when you and Doug Ford are on the same side, that we have seen it recently with things like intimate partner violence and on this one today. But what does it say to you that he couldn't get his caucus to go along with him on this? What does it say about his control of the caucus and his alignment with his caucus on this particular issue?
Well, honestly, I hate to even speculate. I don't know whether he expected that or not. He was not in the legislature himself, in the chamber. But the Premier needs to make sure that his team does the right thing. It's as simple as that. And in this case, they did not.
So on this, there is the social conflict that is happening across the country, driven by what's been happening in the Middle East since October 7th. But then there are also the rules of the legislature that bans props and political expressions. And I know that Keffiyeh has a cultural resonance with people, importance with people, but it's also been seen as a symbol of the Palestinian movement. And the Speaker has ruled that conflicts with the lack of political garments and expressions inside the legislature. We saw the House of Commons, though, where the federal NDP a lot of them were wearing this when they voted in favor of the recent controversial resolution in Israel. How does Speaker Arnott justify this, in your view?
Well, you're right. He does say that he's looked into the matter, and then in his opinion and based on his research, he thinks that it has become a political symbol more recently. That's his argument. I would differ with that. I would say that, and certainly when you look, as you said, in Parliament federally and in other legislatures across the country, the Keffiyeh is seen as it's cultural attire. It's yes, associated with the Palestinian Arab identity. So Arab Muslims, Arab Palestinians wear the Keffiyeh. But in that sense, it's not so different from other items of clothing that also have a strong cultural connection for people, connection back to their cultural heritage and identity. Palestinians are Palestinians, and that is a garment connected to their culture and community. And so in that sense, I think it's not much different than other things. And I pointed out to the Speaker that many of the clothing items that we allow in the legislature now, and rightly so, but were also once associated with with political oppression or resistance. So you think of like the kilt at one time, the kirpan. Certainly today, many of us and many people of Ukrainian descent are wearing very proudly their Ukrainian attire because there's also a conflict happening in their country, and they want to, maintain that connection close to home and community. So I do think that it's a slippery slope. I acknowledge that there's people out there with close connections to the region who have a lot of pain. I absolutely know that and see that. But I do think that shouldn't get in the way of people being able to wear the attire that connects them to their community and their heritage. And that's a really important part of who we are as Canadians.
But just on the ban, it's not just inside the chamber itself, right? You were saying your staff were being asked to take it off just when they entered the building? Like if you're going, because you have offices and stuff, am I understanding that correctly? You can't just wear it?
Yeah, it's the legislative precinct. So, for example, if you were to enter the building, whether you're there for a meeting or to watch things in the chamber, you would be asked to take it off. It's not just about MPPs sitting in the chamber, it's anybody else. And so it is quite a significant move. Certainly within the chamber, as you said, we aren't allowed to use props. There's all kinds of rules around what we can do as MPPs. I can't wear a button or anything, or a flag or something that hasn't been basically approved. But things like wearing your traditional cultural attire and stuff is a little different, and has always up until now been, I think, being allowed.
Right, and certainly when I raised that earlier, I wasn't trying to define it as a prop. I was just trying to explain the rules and the restrictions that exist in place so people at home would understand it. But so you tried to get this done with the unanimous motion today. It didn't happen. The Speaker has said he would change the policy if there's a unanimous consent. That seems unlikely at this point in time, given that one or more members of Doug Ford's caucus have voted against it. So what do you do now? Can you force a vote on this in normal means that requires maybe a recorded vote or a show of hands on this, as opposed to unanimous consent? What do you do to try to push this through?
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm disappointed that it didn't pass, and I bet that doesn't change our position. And so we will be looking at other options. The legislature will be rising until Monday. It'll be coming back on Monday morning. I'm urging every member of the legislature to do the right thing, to support our call. And if that means another motion or another unanimous consent, we will do it. But again, I've heard the Premier, who's the head of the government, they have a majority, say that he supports undoing this ban by the Speaker, and I know the Speaker is open to that if he has the will of the room, of all sides. And so I really need the Premier again to I'm glad he joined my call. I need him to do the right thing and make sure that his team is also doing the right thing.
Now, the Speaker is nominally independent from the government, of course, and reigns supreme inside Parliament in terms of setting the rules. But would you consider going as far as to formally challenge the ruling of the chair and force a vote on this? I know that's a bit more conflict-oriented than you were hoping to go on this, on what's already been a divisive issue. But if the Speaker won't move, absent unanimity, that's one way to get it done.
I mean, absolutely, that's not something I want to that we take lightly. The role of the Speaker is very important, and I'm trying to be as respectful as I can here, certainly. But we will look at all the options that we have, and I will be following up with the Speaker as well to hopefully discuss with him what his thoughts are now, because he did make a statement today that he was open to changing that, and he recognized that leaders of both sides had come to an agreement about this. But again, I mean, if there's going to continue to be outliers within his caucus, the Premier is going to have to address that. I will be looking at all the options we have. I certainly don't want people to feel unwelcome. No Ontarian should feel unwelcome in the Ontario Legislature. We always call it the House, right? I always say this is your house, this is your home, this is where we make decisions that impact you, and people should have the right to be there, to be comfortable in who they are and in their community and their culture and their connections to home.
So this is a final question. The Speaker could change his mind and change the decision on their own without anything needing to happen. Do you get any indication that is a possible path forward here?
Well, so far he hasn't indicated that when he wrote back to me on Tuesday. So we'll see if that changes. In the meantime, I'm sure that he is a thoughtful person, and I'm sure he's having a lot of important conversations. I've received thousands of emails of all supportive, essentially saying they were thanking me for standing up for this, and I'm happy to continue to do so. And I'm sure that the speaker is having some important conversations now too. Hopefully, this won't divide us further. It'll lead to an opportunity for more understanding and coming together to ensure that every Ontarian feels welcome in the legislature.
Ontario NDP Leader Marit Stiles, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.